Thurston County Commissioner Tye Menser, and today I'm having coffee with Nicole Miller, the county's new Racial Equity Program Manager.
Good morning, Tye.
Good morning, Nicole. Nicole, you are the county's first Racial Equity Program Manager. What inspired you to work on issues like this?
So first, I just want to acknowledge that this is a huge honor and privilege to be the county's first Racial Equity Program Manager, and I also acknowledge just the awesome responsibility that it is. Like I really, this is important to me personally, and it's important to me professionally to do pro-justice and anti-racist work. So what inspired me to want to work for the county specifically is I'm a lifelong resident of Thurston County, and I love our community. I had a 26-year career in the state, and while I loved every moment of my state service, I wanted to just really focus on getting back to doing community work and being centered in community. And so that's what inspired me to start. I actually applied for several county positions before I was interviewed for this one, and so I'm glad that I wasn't interviewed for those others, because I think this is a perfect spot for me to be in.
Wonderful. So to start the conversation this morning, I thought it would be helpful to define what racial equity is. And can you provide some kind of general definition of the term for folks that may not be as familiar, and also the acronym DEI?
Absolutely. So racial equity means that race is not a predictor of success or outcomes. So in Thurston County, we know, based on some of the data that we have, that race is a predictor for some of the outcomes for our county residents. And so when we have achieved racial equity, then race is not a predictor of success or outcomes. So in defining DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, diversity is the practice of including a rich and vibrant, diverse voices from the community. And so including people from all walks of life, all racial and ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic, that kind of thing. Equity, again, equity is about everybody having what they need to succeed, and it's different than equality, and I think people get confused a lot in that. Equality is when we all have the same thing, right? And so if you and I were in a race and we were given the same size shoes, neither one of those shoes fit us, that would be equal, right? That we were given the same size shoes. But equity means that we're given shoes that fit us, or we're given equipment that allows us to move about and be mobile. And so it's important that, especially in our community, because that's where I'm working, that we all have an equitable access to resources, services, supports, things like that. Inclusion, sorry, I'm a little nervous, sorry. So inclusion is the practice of, again, including a diverse group of folks. It was interesting, I went to the GARE conference, and GARE is the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, so I participated in that online conference last week. And John Powell of the Othering and Belonging Institute was talking, and one of the things that he was talking about inclusion is great, right, because we're including everybody or a diverse group of folks at the table, but it still implies that somebody has the ability to do the including. And so I think as I do this work, and as we continue with racial equity in Thurston County, we can move to a place of belonging. So it's moving past inclusion, where we're all experiencing a sense of belonging, whether we're community members or whether we work for the county, and we're all co-constructing what that looks like.
Thank you. I wanted folks to kind of hear a little more about that, because DEI is a helpful acronym that we use, but some folks may not be familiar with it. So tell me a little bit about some of the strategies the county is employing to advance this DEI work.
Okay, so shortly after I was hired at the end of August, one of the strategies that I employed, or one of the things that I did, is I just started building relationships with both county staff and with community members, because I think that it's really foundational to doing racial equity work that we have relationships with folks. And so just have spent a lot of time building those relationships. The other thing that I have done is I started an internal racial equity work group, which is representative of divided the county departments into 3 sort of buckets. So law and justice is one bucket, general government is another, and then public health and social services. And I recruited and received like recommendations from folks all across those 3 sort of general buckets and formed an internal racial equity work group. So there's approximately 20 staff from across those departments that we're meeting monthly and doing some really great work together, and then also forming some subcommittees to look at some other things within the county. So a couple things that we're doing is I've also launched a twice a month lunch and learn series, so talking to county employees about just general things around DEI topics. We also started a book club, and we have our first book club meeting at the beginning of May. I forgot to bring the book. I was going to show everybody, but we're getting a ton of support and participation, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
I think we've had, over 50 employees at the lunch and learns, and those have been going on for several months now. There are several. I'm on the policy and procedure committee, which I think is a really great opportunity to have an equity lens on all of our policies and procedures. There are also other members of the racial equity internal group that are on that committee as well. I'm trying to think what other things that we're doing, if I'm missing anything. One of our subcommittees is looking at celebrations, like celebrations of culture. There's a lot of racial equity work to be done, and we also need to celebrate just the diverse folks that we are. So I think that's going to be exciting. And with us being able to get back together, hopefully in person, we can do some things that involve food.
That sounds good.
Yes.
All right.
I think that's it. If I can think of anything.
And we'll
else,
talk about
yeah.
the council in a moment, but
Okay.
what resources or guidance are you pulling from in order to develop the racial equity program for Thurston County?
So one of the things that I'm really pulling from is GARE, and that again, that's the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, and the county is a member of that organization, and they provide a ton of toolkits and resources and best practices and data, and so I think that's really important. Grounding myself in community, I think that's another just resource that I'm really relying on. I'm spending a lot of time just out in the community, getting to know folks and establishing those relationships. Following best practices, reading a lot of, and not just pulling this all out of my head and saying this is what Nicole wants to do, definitely pulling from best practices and community voice.
So perhaps one of the biggest actions that has happened so far, or is on the precipice of a launch, is the Board of County Commissioners approving a Thurston County Council on Racial Equity and Inclusion. I wanted to get that name just right. And recently, the Board of Commissioners approved the application process for establishing this council. This is an exciting step, at least for me. And can you share a little bit more about the council, its membership, and its mission?
Yes, absolutely. And there's some specific things that I want to read. So I pulled this so that I could read about the council. From
the board's resolution?
Yes, from
Okay.
resolution 16097, as a matter of fact. So I just want to read this, and then we can talk more about the council. So the purpose of the council is to advise and engage the county commission, Board of Health, elected and appointed officials on matters of racial equity and inclusion within all county services and the policies, processes, and practices used to accomplish the mission of Thurston County government. This includes providing input to the county commission, Board of Health, elected and appointed officials based on the results of a workplace assessment, which I'll talk about in a minute, identifying barriers for BIPOC community members that prevent full participation in the access, use, and receipt of county government services and resources, especially when compared to non-BIPOC residents, and providing input to develop and implement a comprehensive racial equity action plan, including future updates and modifications and other efforts aimed at creating a more equitable community. The council may also choose to engage in community and educational outreach to build relationships and seek further community feedback regarding the work of the council from the greater BIPOC communities. And the resolution goes on to outline a lot more responsibilities and tasks that the commission or the council can avail themselves of, but I don't want to read, obviously, the whole
And
resolution.
BIPOC stands for?
Black, Indigenous, People of Color.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry about that, the acronym.
Wonderful. So what are your hopes for this council, and how do you think having a diverse set of community voices is going to advance our racial equity goals in the county?
So my hope for the council is, number one, that we get a very diverse group of applicants and that we have a rich, vibrant pool to choose from. I mean, I hope that people are just flooding in those applications. And the application process will go live after this. This is sort of the launching of that.
Okay.
And so there'll be, we're going to send the application out broadly after that. But my hope is that the council will be up and running and will be able to address some of the issues in our county regarding inequities. And yeah, I also hope that I know that the Olympia Equity Commission, City of Olympia's Equity Commission they just announced those members, and the Lacey Equity Commission is up and running. And so there's been conversations about hopefully having all three commissions, maybe have some conversations together so that we're having a unified and universal approach to racial equity in Thurston County at large.
That would be exciting, a summit between the different
Yeah,
councils.
it would be really exciting.
So are there, I know the commissioners debated this a little bit, but are there qualifications to serve on the council? How does someone go about applying if they hear this and get excited?
All righty. So yes, there are qualifications. And this is, we're starting with initially 7 founding members of this Racial Equity Council. And the council is a mouthful. The title is definitely a mouthful. I did think of that title, and I would like to rethink that. Maybe if the council loves it, they can keep it, but it is hard to say. But so again,
Something with a pithy acronym would be what we
right?
need.
and acronyms, they get so confusing sometimes. Anyway, so again, it's really important that those initial 7 founding members identify as a person of color, so identify as BIPOC. We're really anchoring this Racial Equity Council in race so that we can create a framework for other marginalized and oppressed communities, because leading with race is just really foundational. And so those initial 7 members need to identify as people of color. And then also we discussed and we made a decision that at least or a minimum of 50% of our council members will reside in areas outside of the city of Lacey, the city of Olympia, or the city of Tumwater, so that we can have representation from the county at large and particularly South County. And so,
Do people go online or?
people for the application,
Yeah.
people can go on. They can go online to the county website. It's posted where all of the boards and commissions are. I'm going to be. We're going to be doing a news release later on today, possibly tomorrow, where the application will be attached. I'm hoping that our public information officers will blast the application broadly. I'm going to send it out to my networks, and I'm just hoping, again, that just a rich, diverse group of folks apply.
What's your projected date for a first meeting, are you thinking?
So that's interesting. You know, learning the county process has been
It's slow.
a growth moment for
Sometimes.
me. I tend, and people who have worked with me know that I like to really charge ahead. And so I've had to adjust some timelines just based on learning the process, which has been really valuable and important, of course. I'm hoping that we will have this council up and running in the first meeting by July, is what my hope is. A lot will depend on how quickly people get their applications in. I think we'll have probably a first look at the applications towards the end of May to see what how many we have. The council will grow. I forgot to mention this. The council will grow to a total of 15 members over the next 3 years, and those initial 7 founding members will be really instrumental in determining sort of what the demographics and look like for the rest of the members.
What are some of the measures you look at to determine whether an organization or community, where they are in their journey toward racial equity inclusion? Like, what are measurable things that we're going to look for?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we're doing, which is really exciting, is we're doing an all countywide survey this summer, and that is something that GARE is doing for us as a part of our membership. So it's just part of our membership. It's at no cost to us or to the county. And I'm hoping for 100% participation. I know that's a lofty goal, but I like to aim high. And so that will be the start sort of Thurston County government and staff figuring out where we are at. I can't remember how long the survey is. It's less than 50 questions. It takes about 20 minutes. It's multiple choice. I've looked at it. But it just determines kind of where we are at. and then we get, after we do that survey, we get an assessment back from GARE, kind of about, again, where we are at and some suggestions on moving forward. And so I'm hoping to present that. We'll have the results by fall, and so I'm hoping to present that to the council, and so that they can look that over along with the internal racial equity group, and maybe look at some strategies moving forward for 2023 and beyond. So surveys are always a really great measure. Talking to community, like having authentic, meaningful opportunities for us to relate and talk to our community about how things are working. I think that's always a measure. I'm also participating along with several other leaders in Thurston County government. We're participating in the YWCA's Intercultural Foundations workshop cohort training. And as part of that work, we did an individual assessment on where we are individually. And so I'm getting ready to get my results. So that'll be interesting to see that. Yeah.
Some of the data that we looked at the Board of Health was about health outcome disparities that we've seen across Thurston County. And Thurston Thrives, which is a collective impact health-focused organization in Thurston County, has focused its work directly on these race-based health disparities. So that's something that we're trying to weave into the work that you're working on, and those would be some data points that we can track as we go forward. So it's always good to look for those numbers. People like numbers, and because you can really see differences and changes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was looking at the Chapter 11, the Health and Human Services portion of our comprehensive plan, and we do have very distinct health disparities for our communities of color in Thurston County, and so we've got work to do.
Yeah, and that language in the comprehensive plan came from Thurston Thrive, so we're hoping we can bolster that work that they're doing.
Absolutely.
So where can people find out more information about the county's work on racial equity, DEI, and inclusion, belonging?
So anyone can reach out to me. I don't have my phone number memorized, so I can't say it, but
you have an email, though.
I have an email. It's nicole.miller at, I don't know the county's website,
co.thurston.wa.us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
It just comes in when I do it on email. But people can email me and ask me questions. They can call the Board of County Commissioners office. They can also, for internal county folks, we have a SharePoint site, which I'm going to do full disclosure. This is my first ever SharePoint experience, and it's for all those people who do SharePoint sites, you're amazing, because it's really hard. I also have a racial equity and inclusion webpage that's available to the community at large. Also, I'm sure if my kids are watching right now, they're cracking up as I'm saying that I have a webpage, because I don't have any social media, and I never have. I mean, I just sort of but I just started like looking at TikTok, and I really like the videos. I don't make any, of course. But so I'm just saying this to say that my webpage isn't that great either, because I'm just super new to this, but I'm learning along with everybody else. So there's a county webpage that people can look at, and I update things regularly. Where else can people find out? I think that's about it.
Okay, well, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
Are there other resources you can suggest for folks in the community that want to learn more about the impacts of racism and ways to address it?
Yes. So then that depends on what kind of, like how you like to consume information, right? There are amazing books out there, and I'm not going to name any specific book because I just don't want, there's lots of them. You can Google, the best books on anti-racism, the best books on DEI in the workplace. Just there's lots of books out there for people to read. There's books, and many of the books on DEI issues are also available through audio. People can listen to podcasts. I am going to name a podcast that I was listening to earlier. There's a really great podcast called From Woke to Work, and it's really just about putting this into action, right? We're all motivated to do this work, and so then what are our next steps into doing that? And so that's a really great podcast. But people can consume podcasts. People can get out in community. We've got cultural resources in our community that people can get into and participate in. And
I've been noticing at our local bookstores, they've all got basically featured sections, and they're putting stuff out there that they're encouraging folks to take a look at.
Yeah.
And in our house, we read the book Stamped from the Beginning, and there's a condensed or a somewhat simplified version for youth that are being used in schools. So it's really dense, but it's got a lot of excellent historical information. But
yeah,
there's a lot out there coming out.
It's an excellent one. And I'm thinking about one of our county staff suggested doing a book club for parents, like so that maybe myself would lead a book club for parents of our county staff who are parents and want to talk to their young people about race. I do. I know you're not asking me a question right now, but it just has dawned upon me that I did not give a shout out to my 3 amazing children. So I forgot in my intro to talk about part of why this work is so important to me is just the amazing. I have 3 kids that I'm raising, and I have a 23-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And 2 of my 3 went to school here in Thurston County. But just raising biracial children in this community, again, it just strikes me as how important this work is, both personally and professionally. And so I just am remiss in not mentioning my children. So I wanted to say that. Sorry,
Absolutely.
kiddos.
Thank you, Nicole. I want to thank you for joining me this morning on our Coffee with Commissioner. This has been a good topic to cover, and I'm introducing you to the community. For everyone watching, if you want to keep up with your local government, subscribe to the county's YouTube channel. All Thurston County Board of County Commissioners meetings and work sessions are live streamed there. Thank you so much.